in the Russian context, what we're looking at is that it's much more part of an internationalization process. We're looking at how EMI can be part of getting into the international academic realm. So, internationalization, why do we do it? Well, first of all, if you're a Russian university and you want to expand your target audience for students, most of the people who can attend a Russian-based degree program are already in Russia. There aren't too many people out there who would trust themselves to come from outside of Russia and study a degree in Russian. So you immediately increase massively your range of potential students. And in many countries, this will mean extra income, which is always welcome. Next, it provides much greater academic opportunities for staff and students. You can be involved more frequently in international projects, collaborations and so on. And also it provides generally, you have partners abroad, you can do exchanges. We heard yesterday that at ITMO, where we are now, this has provided lots of opportunities for students and staff to do exchanges with foreign universities. I was talking some weeks ago about this whole concept and how you can picture it. Yeah, picture paints 1,000 words, to use a chunk. I discussed this with my wife, and we came up with the idea of an iceberg, very cliche, traditional idea of an iceberg. 20% is above the water, that's EMI. 80% is below the water, that's the rest of it. Okay, and so I went looking for an image, and I thought, this is a great image for going to Russia. Iceberg vodka. There we have it, 20% above the water. However, I actually think there's a better analogy. I think this is much better as a journey. When people decide to come to this university or to any international university, there's a process that goes on, and the university has got a massive part to play in that process. There's a fact which seems to be accepted in British university life, but which I can find no proof for, that 70% of students decide on their British university just from the website. Now, I find that incredible, but apparently it's true. That's going to be much higher, obviously. If I decide to go to Vladivostok, then the chances of visiting the campus are pretty low if I'm living in Southampton. So that's one thing. Another study did show that most students drop out. So those students that do drop out for no reason to do with the course. So it wasn't to do with the teaching, the content, anything like that. It was to do with a bad choice. About 66% of the students researched said it was basically they made a bad choice. Second one, about 50% of students said that it was the atmosphere at the university. They just didn't feel they fitted in. So I much prefer to look on this as this journey. And it starts with choices. So, and you may think, well, yeah, okay, fine, but what's this got to do with me? Well, I'm hoping that by the end of this, I'll be able to help you to see that there are opportunities for English language professionals here, that it's not just about teaching people to teach in English or teaching yourself in English, it's about how you can be involved in a much bigger process. So we've got choices. The next thing we've got is culture, and we'll look at that. Then the course comes down the road, but I've done a lot of work by then as a student. And then finally, we've got the kind of academic environment. You know, what it's like to be there, what it's like to interact with the academic community at the university. So I thought I'd just take a page, and apologies to ITMO, but I've nicked one of your pages. This was in the international part of your website. And I found it interesting. You know, if I'm a potential university student, and I'm looking at it coming to ITMO, What does this tell me about who I might need to contact? Well, there's a thing there on dorms, accommodation, the accommodation office. I may well have accommodation issues. So I'm going to be talking to people in accommodation, I hope. Timetabling, class scheduling. I don't know, when I worked at Solent University, timetabling was a nightmare. And students were really, always stressed at the beginning of the semester about their timetabling. Admissions in general, you've got departmental staff will be involved in that. You've got some kind of admissions department. You've got, if you're talking about international mobility, you're talking about maybe an international office for students. You might be talking about mobility for staff, human resources, and so on. That could be staff coming in. That could be visiting academics. Yeah. So, just on this page, I think you can see that there are loads of bits of the university that need to interact with the outside world. People will be looking at the website. Who wrote that website? Who decided what to put information on that website? Who's got that skill set that can look at that and say, that's appropriate? And I would suggest maybe you guys, but we'll come back to that. So that's an idea of some of the choices that people have to make. Then we look at culture. Culture is us. Your culture is everything that you've absorbed ever since you were born, and perhaps before. It's what happens when you meet people. It's what you expect to happen when you walk into a bar. That's what makes me a little bit nervous when I go to the bathrooms down here and I'm not quite sure what door to go in and what I should do. Hang on, it's the same door. Did I read that right? Cultural exchange is stress. Culture shock is real. It will always happen. To what extent it happens and the effect of it will depend partly on the individual, but it will also depend partly on the support mechanisms that are available at their destination. Now, I'm sure many people have heard of Hofstede. Put your hand up if you've heard of Hofstede. Well, not too many. Okay, right, okay. Geert Hofstede is a Dutch psychologist, and he's done a study into the different cultural aspects of different countries, and he uses 6 dimensions to sort of identify different characteristics of various cultures. Now, I'm in Russia, so I chose Russia. I'm from the UK, so I chose the UK. China is a massive market, so I chose China. The US will be very similar to the UK, won't be the same. So immediately you can see this jagged profile. Yeah? There are big differences here, huge differences. So for example, you may not be able to read that so good, so let's have a look. Power distance is the extent to which we accept status, different levels of hierarchy, and what we think about that. So immediately here you'll see, and won't be surprised probably, that the UK has a very low tolerance of power distance. CEOs of companies will be called by their first name. Academics will be called by their first name. A massively high rating for Russia. Okay, so that's a big difference. Here we have a massively high rating for the UK. Individualism. This is the extent to which the culture is about I or we. And again, you won't be surprised to see China very low on the individual.